Captain, we have them. We've established Transporter Lock, the Star Trek podcast. Join Ken and Sabriel each week as they explore strange new episodes, seek out new plots and new characters, and boldly go where no podcast has gone before.
Hello and welcome to Transporter Lock. I am Captain Sabriel Maston, and there's Klingons off the starboard bow, starboard bow, starboard bow. There's Klingons off the starboard bow. Fight them off, Ken!
All the live long day.
And as usual, I'm joined by co-host Ken Gagney.
Hi, Captain Sabriel. How are you today?
I'm good, and I skipped your rank again.
I don't have a rank. I'm flexible. I'm malleable. You know, everybody on the ship does. They wear a lot of hats. They do whatever job is necessary.
That's just us too, so.
Right. Why would Starfleet send out a vessel with just 2 people on it?
Remember me! Chief Engineer Ken Gagney, and that, of course, is Dr. Demento. It's a little Star Trek song. For some reason, I figured every Star Trek podcast is doing some kind of musical thing this week, and I'm not going to be any different.
Unfortunately, we're not a video podcast, and y'all can't see the delightful choreography that Sabriel arranged for us.
It's beautiful. We're still dancing to this moment.
That's right. Or like Shuffle Ball Change, Grapevine. It's fantastic. It's got everything. So this week, we are reviewing 2 extremely tonally different shows.
Maybe we could have planned this a little better, but we didn't know.
Well, maybe they could have planned it a little bit better, Paramount. Yeah, we tend to bunch up 2 episodes of Strange New Worlds into one podcast episode, and this week, those episodes are Under the Cloak of War and Subspace Rhapsody. And we tend to go in order, so although we are starting off very lighthearted and jocular, we are nonetheless going to discuss the sad, depressing war episode first.
You know what? You always need some levity when you're talking about heavy topics.
It's true. We laugh at what we're scared of.
Exactly. Like horror movies, that's why they're humorous as well, because you need that levity.
Some of them. I hear the latest Evil Dead movie kind of just drops all the camp that Bruce Campbell is known for and just goes straight horror.
What's the point? It's not groovy.
That's not Evil Dead.
That's not groovy.
But I also haven't seen the movie myself, so...
Oh, well, there's that. I haven't either.
Yeah, just word of mouth.
Yeah, I thought I had a segue, I didn't, so should we just jump into it?
Yeah, Under the Cloak of War, Season 2, Episode 8 has a reformed Klingon general, is now a Starfleet ambassador, and is brought aboard the Enterprise for them to courier him, or chauffeur him from one starbase to another. And unfortunately, this guy was the main villain on the moon of Jagal, where Dr. Mbenga and Nurse Chapel served during the Klingon War. So this isn't just general racism towards Klingons that we're seeing. This is very personal toward this Klingon when the crew of the Enterprise experienced a lot of tension about him being on board.
Yeah, Ambassador Doc Ra. I walked away from this episode. This is so heavy. Like, I watch these on Thursday morning before I start my day. And what a way to start your day.
Yeah, you warned me it was a dark episode, and at first I thought that meant dark as in, like, how Icheb died on Star Trek Picard, like, just gratuitous, but then you clarified, no, it's a good episode, it's just dark and heavy. I was like, oh, okay, so I'm not going to watch that before I go to work. I watched it that night and then was unable to sleep.
Oh, wow. So we've got a number of references to the Butcher of Jagal over the time, especially at the beginning of the season here, the very first episode. And we've gotten hints that over the 2 years that the war was tough on Dr. Mbenga and Nurse Chapel. And here we kind of finally get to see the play out in this episode. And they're working on a MASH unit on Jagal. And wow, things were rough. We didn't see much of the Klingon War because Discovery missed most of it. And getting these little glimpses of it. Things were not good for the Federation. Things were not good, period. War is always rough. I don't think neither of us have served, so we do not have a perspective beyond what we've consumed in media or heard or know of family who have done so.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. As you know, Sabriel, in this podcast, I love to insert myself into the stories that we see and talk about what I would do in those scenarios. And you always remind me that I'm not these characters and I would not do the things that they would do. which is valid. But it's especially true this week because I cannot empathize from experience with anything that Mbenga and Chapel are experiencing this week. Like, I've never been in war. I've never experienced PTSD or what used to be called shell shock. I can react to what they did, but I can't say I would do anything different.
I have had PTSD for not war-related things. People who have really affected me and how much it can shut me down. That I could relate to, but the causes of were completely different. What they had to experience. So we just do our best here. I saw that Melissa Navia on Twitter, that's Lieutenant Artegas. She had said that apparently she could not comment much because of the strike, but she had received a number of messages from war veterans thanking her for her portrayal of the difficulty of working through her own PTSD and how they saw themselves reflected in her.
That's interesting because although she certainly had a important role in this episode, I wouldn't say it was a critical role.
That doesn't mean the others didn't get those messages either. She's just the only one I saw speak up online.
True. That's valid. Yeah, we saw her reaction at first when the ambassador stepped on the bridge. It was one of those "he's right behind me, isn't he?" scenes, and it reminded me of Ortegas's portrayal in I think it was the finale last season in the alternate timeline where Pike remains captain of the Enterprise, and she was very, I guess the best word for it is racist against Romulans and Vulcans.
Yeah, they had her play the part of the person who's not there in the episode.
Right. In the original, was it Balance of Terror or the Enterprise incident? I always confuse those two. It was Balance of Terror.
Balance of Terror, yep.
Yeah, in the original Balance of Terror, there was some helmsman, a dude who was racist, and those same lines basically were being said by her. And so I was hoping that was a characteristic of her that was unique to that timeline. I'm not sure that it is, because in this week we saw her not just discomfortable about the Klingon being on board, but also suspecting that he wasn't actually a reformed ambassador, that this was all part of a long con. And I didn't see any evidence of that, and I don't believe it to be true.
It was left to be a mystery at the end.
It's certainly possible, but I think it would have been confirmed one way or the other, in my opinion.
For some reason, they're keeping that one close to the chest. They wanted to keep that up in the air, and I thought this episode was going to be like the reason, might be part of the reason or the reason why we later see Mbenga is no longer the CMO on Enterprise.
That's possible. We haven't seen any steps taken toward that in the immediate moments afterward, or even in the next episode. Yeah.
This thing might lead to or be part of that. Or it could be something else. Or maybe they're like, maybe we have two chief medical officers and we just never found that out in the original series.
Well, at my workplace, which is very different from either medical or Starfleet, you can step down from being a team lead, or what most places would call a manager, and it's not considered a demotion and there's no impact on your salary. Team lead is a position that you volunteer to step into, and when you've had your fill of it, you can step back down to be an individual contributor, or IC.
Interesting.
Yeah. So maybe Dr. Mbenga was like, you know what? I have done my time as a CMO. I've enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to having a little bit less stress and responsibility. Because especially in Starfleet, you don't get paid for these jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I even Picard famously said that the motivation for humanity in the future is to better themselves. It's not to get a promotion or make more money or raise a family. And so maybe Dr. Mbenga was like, you know what, with the less time that is needed to be an individual contributor instead of a CMO, I can better myself in other ways. I really wanted to be doing this jigsaw puzzle instead.
Or maybe he's just night shift.
Night shift. Do you know the story about Steve Jobs being on the night shift?
I don't think I do.
Before he founded Apple, he worked at Atari.
Oh, that part I know.
So, and he was vegan, which he felt meant he didn't need to bathe.
Oh, yeah, that part, yeah.
Yeah.
I have heard that. I read his story.
And so they put him on the night shift because nobody wanted to work with him during the day, and he was the only one on the night shift. So after everybody else went home, he'd come in, have the office to himself, do his work, and then go home before anybody else came in so that they wouldn't have to smell him.
He's one of those who gave vegans a bad name.
There are a lot of aspects of Steve Jobs that I don't admire.
Right. Oh, there's many.
I'm a huge Apple fan, and I acknowledge he was a genius and he changed this world, and I'm grateful for his existence, and I was sad when he died. But there were a lot of things not to admire about that person, and his beliefs about veganism, or rather the qualities he felt that they conferred.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Special vegan powers.
Right, you're right. Just like in Scott Pilgrim. Like I'm not vegan. I'm pro-vegan, but I'm not. I'm also pro-bathing. Anyway, tangent.
These trips to the MASH unit in the past, these flashbacks, were just wow. That was some tough stuff. Nurse Chapel going through that, seeing that most of it was actually through her point. Oh no, I don't want to say most of it. Some of it was through her point of view.
Yeah.
And but she's at this point she seemed like she didn't have much war experience yet. She just kind of dropped off there. And having to just jump into that reality. It's tough having to pump a guy's heart with her own hands. The whole transporter incident. The shoppers coming in with new people, basically.
I was afraid when she proposed purging the transporter buffer. And of course, we've seen this technique used not only in the TNG episode Relics, but also last season in Strange New Worlds with Dr. Mbenga's daughter. I was afraid that she was going to purge the buffer, then realize what she had done. Like she would have done it by accident. Because I've read sci-fi novels where stuff like that happens. And it's just terrifying, the regret and guilt that the person has to live with for making a mistake. And here she is spared that because Dr. Mbenga, without pausing, just does it intentionally. And the lack of hesitation in him is something I find both admirable and horrifying.
Oh, this is part of the reason where he reveals that he is the butcher of Jagal. This is part of that whole thing. It's not only the way he killed all those Klingons at the end, and this guy took all the credit for it. It was him, the way how he sees himself, and the actions that he had to do on Jagal. And like this guy's gone through so much crap, and now he's just had to this is what we got to do. At this point, we've already missed his journey to this dark place, and now we're seeing Chapel's ability to cope with that. That's rough, seeing this guy who's already hurt before we even saw him appear in this episode.
Yeah, we have no idea how he gained these almost legendary assassin-like skills before he switched classes to become a doctor. We do finally get an answer to Protocol 12, which is the stuff that we saw him and Chapel taking in the first episode of this season when they were trapped on that faux Starfleet ship. And I think I said on this podcast that I suspected it was mostly adrenaline, and we got some confirmation of that this week, and maybe some other stuff as well. But
Dorian Trooper was asking for serum, and he's like, no. That stuff messes you up.
Yeah, and Dr. Mbenga says, I don't have it, I don't make it anymore, and then he pulls some out. So I suspect he was lying because I think he even said in the season premiere that he always has some on him.
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah, he was absolutely lying. He didn't want to. We still see that he's trying to be a good person under there. He did not want to share this stuff. He did not want to kill people.
Yeah.
Or, yeah. No, man, this is a tough one.
Yeah, and from the season premiere, we also suspect, or at least I do, that Chapel had taken Protocol 12 before. We don't see her do it in this episode, but there must be more to her story.
Yeah, there's absolutely more to the story. We have not gotten a specific call out to this little thing they do with their eye. They trace their cheek. However, here, when I was watching it again this morning, Ambassador Doc Ra, he has a tattoo that was similar in shape to what they were drawing.
Hmm.
And I'm wondering if that is their own personal reference to Jagal. I don't remember what happened there. But then I thought we saw La'an do it once too.
We saw Mbenga do it to La'an.
Maybe that's what it was. Maybe I got it backwards. So maybe that was. But then wouldn't have the significance unless she was there at a different time.
Right. I don't know what it means. I don't know that it originates on Jagal, but I don't think we have gotten the answer. I don't know that we have enough information yet, but
It was my hypothesis.
Yeah, and it's a good hypothesis, but I don't get it. I still don't get it. Let's talk about the ambassador. I don't think he's a very good ambassador.
I didn't like that guy at all. Just like him as a character, I did not like him at all. And it had nothing to do with him being Klingon. Something did feel off about him. Maybe everyone was right. It was left to be ambiguous. But was there something about him that you felt?
Yeah, what I'm reminded of is a time that I spent in community theater. I used to do 4 shows a year or so. And I would, after our show was over, I would keep in touch with my former castmates, find out what new shows they were doing. I'd go see those shows. And I was in the lobby after a show waiting for my friend. And this guy comes up to me and says, "Hey, Ken." And I was like, "I'm sorry, I don't remember you." And he seemed really offended by that. He said that we had auditioned for a show together like 2 years earlier. And he kept like following me around the lobby, harassing me, hounding me, being like, "How could you forget? We did this thing together. I was in this show, blah, 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 blah." Like, he was very ungracious about it, and he just wouldn't let it go. He wouldn't drop the matter. And I hadn't said or done anything to antagonize him to this degree. And I kind of felt like that was the way with this ambassador. Like, at one point, Dr. Mbenga clasps his hands and says, "Please leave me alone." And the ambassador just plows right through that boundary and just keeps hounding at him, just keeps picking at that scab and won't let it go. And it's no surprise that Dr. Mbenga exploded at him. I'm not justifying the end result, but this is almost what the Klingon wanted.
Yeah, no. I got that feeling too. He was trying to push him. Well, like Mbenga said, he wanted to be told he's okay. I mean, he wanted that so badly that he told that. Basically, you would be told that he's a good person when, like, Mbenga is not the person to do that, but he wanted to hear it so badly from him.
But if you could hear it from him, that would mean more than from anybody else. This Klingon was seeking absolution for his crimes. He hadn't forgiven himself, so he was seeking external validation. Whereas Mbenga, I don't think he's seeking redemption. I don't think he's seeking forgiveness. I think he acknowledges that he has done dark things, and he just accepts that that's who he is. He doesn't need to change it. He doesn't need to be absolved of it. It's just, this is me. This is who I am.
Yeah. It's interesting. We got a whole little tiny plot, the whole episode here of. No, I'm jumping back.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go back to stick on Dr. Ra here. God, this guy, yeah, no, he's creeped out and messed up, and then like him taking credit for everything that Mbenga did.
It's kind of weird because that's part of what he wants absolution for. Like, he has this dark past where he killed his own men, and nobody admires him for that. And yet he didn't actually do it. The truth is, in his opinion, he was a coward, which in the Klingon world is even worse.
And then, like, maybe he did want all this peace. Maybe he was being authentic for all those scenes here we saw. But then he's using the wrong justification to do it instead of just being himself.
Yeah, I feel like an ambassador should be better at reading the room.
I mean, he wasn't trained for it, I suppose.
No, that's true. But
I'm with you. He should.
Like, originally, Mbenga wasn't trained to be a doctor.
Do we know that? I thought he was.
No, we don't. But I'm just referring back to, he picked up some warrior skills at some point.
I thought I missed something. Okay.
Nope. Just conjecture that. I'm guessing that he I think that even though I just said he sort of accepts who he is, I think at the same time, being a doctor is sort of Mbenga's road to redemption. He's trying to save more lives than he killed to undo his past crimes. And I don't think I don't know. He's a complex character, and I feel like I'm contradicting myself in trying to explain him away. And that just refers back to how complex he is.
See, I just figured like if you're in the military, a lot of people are just taught how to fight, even doctors, to some degree.
You know what? But I mean, that's probably true. I mean, even everybody in the military goes through basic training. That's correct. I don't know where Protocol 12 came from because you don't get taught that.
I pulled up Memory Alpha here, and it says at some point he served as a Starfleet Special Forces operative, so he might have been a medical officer while he was in Special Ops. We just had not been told. So he went through Special Ops training. But that is the known, but we just don't know how the crossover.
One thing not specific to a character in this episode that kind of surprised me, I feel like even in DS9, we didn't get this intimate a perspective on ground movements during a war. We see a lot of ship-to-ship battle and a lot of capability for mass destruction from the sky. But individual troops, I don't feel like we see that much.
I think it was only the siege of AR something 18.
Yeah.
Whatever that. That's about the only bit. Like they might hint at it here or there, but yeah, we didn't really see much because like Star Trek they toy with war, they toy with that as a story, but we rarely ever actually saw what you're saying, like anything else. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I mean, DS9 did more than toy with it, but what we saw of the war, I mean, the scene, the very first scene that comes to my mind in this discussion you and I are having is, I think, Admiral Ross and a bunch of other people on DS9 reading the casualty list. Every single week it comes in, and every single week the cast of DS9, the crew, make a point to read every single name on there. And I remember, I think it was Jadzia walking away sad because some friend who we'd never heard of or seen before was on that list.
When I say toy, I meant more like the ground part.
Right. And no, I get you. And that's why I'm referring back to that scene, because this is a scene on Deep Space Nine, which is a relatively safe space. And they're reading the results of the war, not seeing the war.
Yeah.
No, I get you.
We get a little side story, a little thing, beginning, or at some point, Dr. Mbenga is talking about how the biobed hasn't worked since the attack. I mean, it's a total allegory for him. Since the Gorn attack, and at the end, it's still futzing around. It's still broken. Like, he's still a broken man, just like this biobed. It was like, I found it interesting little parallel. Very obvious what they're going for, but also I just found it interesting. He still considers himself broken. And we talked about privately, or was it Shar? Maybe it was Shar, not you. Now I'm drawing a blank. You'll figure it out with therapy in the future. Seems to be lacking, but we don't know that he hasn't gone through therapy either. It's just things are still rough.
I mean, we did see some pretty good manifestations of therapy and asking for help and dealing with mental trauma in Discovery, and you and I have talked about that on this show. How they even had an admiral whose background was in, I think, therapy or
Admiral Cardwell. That's
right. So I don't know where that is on this Enterprise. They certainly don't have a ship's counselor. Like Dr. Culber doing double duty. After this episode, I'm not sure Mbenga is the person you would want to go to for therapy.
No,
but
I we don't know they don't, but I guess we don't know his personal journey, but man, he's still got some things to work through.
Well, you know what? I just said that, and now I need to take it back because we're all traumatized in some way. And if we had to heal ourselves before we could help other people heal themselves, nobody would ever be able to help anybody.
Also true.
So I apologize for that remark. We're all, there is, personal trauma is not a barrier to helping others. I should be clear about that.
Right.
We should talk about the end of the episode, which was seen through frosted glass. We don't actually know what happened there. We know that Mbenga, for all these years, has been carrying the Klingon knife used to kill those 3 warriors, and he happens to have it out when the ambassador comes to visit him.
Mm-hmm.
And it ends up in the ambassador, and the ambassador is dead. I want to briefly share my first 2 remarks. One is, I'm surprised that stab wound was fatal, because we spent the whole episode seeing the lengths to which the doctor and the nurse were capable of going to save a Starfleet soldier from much more grievous wounds. I feel like a stab wound, we've seen worse on TNG, like Picard got shot by a bow and arrow in Who Watches the Watchers, and he was fine. It was just a voiceover. It's like, Captain's log, Dr. Pulaski patched me up as she always does, or Dr. Crusher, rather. And I was like, oh, but in this case, it's fatal, which is very convenient to the plot.
I mean, look at the 2 people who were there when it happened. I can see exactly why.
Well, that's why I'm wondering, did they... That's kind of what was running through my head this past week, is there's a difference here. Did Mbenga kill the ambassador, or did Mbenga let the ambassador die? And those are 2 related but distinct questions.
I think both can be true, too.
Yes, absolutely. But I feel like if they had acted swiftly, they could have pulled that knife out, they even mentioned they have the organ replacement machine isn't available. Like they have that level of technology. They can't fix a stab wound to a patient who has double organs. I don't know.
I mean, to me, that's you're answering it right there. They let him die.
Which you would think would come up in the inquiry.
Which we haven't seen.
And we won't.
No. Which again leads to maybe what might happen. Or maybe he got stabbed in the heart too long, or it's just right. You know what? We're gonna find out, or we might not find out.
I don't think we will, but I found the circumstances of his death suspicious, to say the least.
Oh, absolutely. That was what they were going for.
Yeah. What do you think about that scene or that episode?
The scene rather. That was I think I kind of covered that there. I didn't expect a person to die this episode, even the Klingon here. But I can understand why Mbenga did it and why Chapel covering for him. I can say it's right. I can just see why. Everyone was living through, so many people on the ship were going through such anxiety, like of him being on here. I'm having a hard time talking about it.
Well, let me ask you this, and this is going to be conjecture because we don't have the facts. Do you think the ambassador's death was in self-defense?
I don't know.
Was there a comma there?
That was the Shatner. No, I don't know. I have been thinking about this for 2 weeks. Like, they sure hinted, like, it was... I know, it feels like people talk online that it was self-defense. I'm not convinced, and I don't know if I need the answer. Maybe we'll get one eventually, but I don't know. I think it makes it interesting. I think it makes Mbenga's story harder, that I don't know. Yeah. So, yeah, like even now, I'm trying. like, can I see a situation where it's self-defense? Yes. Can also see it where this ambassador was being antagonistic. Absolutely. How about you?
Given that we'd previously seen these 2 characters going at each other with Klingon judo, I believe they called it, I feel it hard to believe that Mbenga had to resort to a knife to get the ambassador away. Now, granted, if the ambassador was not engaging in judo, if he was being more aggressive, then more aggressive response may have been called for. But I feel like we have seen that Mbenga has sufficient martial arts to defend himself without relying on stabbing, piercing weapons. So I feel like it was a heat of the moment. It may have been called for, it may not have been, but it was not necessary, in my opinion.
Uh-huh.
I think that a different character, when assaulted by a Klingon of all people, would certainly grab the nearest knife. Absolutely. But Mbenga is not most people.
I mean, they even set this up for the question. Like, they set us up already for this question with those two sparring with the Klingon martial arts. They showed us that exactly what you're saying. He could defend himself.
Yeah.
And so it just leads more into like, was it self-defense? Sure seems like might have been, but maybe not.
Yeah. I hadn't thought of this before, but there was a 1997 movie starring Nicolas Cage called Con Air,
Mm-hmm.
where I only saw it once, so this was going back 26 years now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if I recall, he is a soldier whose wife is being attacked outside of a bar, and he goes to defend his wife and ends up killing the assailants.
About Nicolas Cage's character?
Yes.
I don't remember at all. It's
And-
been 10, 15 years.
And so Nicolas Cage is actually, he goes to trial and is found guilty of murder because he, as a soldier, has better responses at his disposal than
Mhm.
lethal force. So he could have incapacitated the assailants without killing them. And, so for most people, it might have been self-defense, but not for him. And so if that's a precedent, I feel like that's also the case here with Dr. Mbenga. He had better options available.
Maybe that's what the inquiry will do. Pike is not equipped to handle this one.
No, absolutely not. And I'm surprised that, I'm glad that this is a Starfleet ambassador and not an ambassador from the Klingon Empire, because his murder would be an act of war.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, there was I thought it was a great scene showing Pike and Number One talking. Una said that we're redirecting the ship. We're doing this basically to Pike. And they had a moment where Pike is like, "What basically? But what about Federation ideals?" And Una's like, "Yeah,
I agree in the abstract.
I agree, and they're both right." Like,
Yep.
I thought it was just a great scene of them bouncing off each other. Like, you were 100% right, both of you.
Yeah, I've had. This is often a case that's similar to, on a much lower scale, customer service.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do when you have to help a customer who believes that you shouldn't exist, or when the customer is asking for your help creating hate speech or funding hate speech?
Mm-hmm.
This is something that I've seen in my career, and it's challenging. It's also interesting that in some ways, like, again, conjecture, if Number One had not redirected the ship, the ambassador might still be alive, because his excuse for going to see Mbenga was, looks like our time is being cut short, so let's have this conversation now.
Yeah, I hadn't gotten there.
Yeah, just cause and effect, unintended consequences.
Uh-huh. Oh, speaking of, we also saw Nurse Chapel and Spock having difficulty not being able to be there for her.
Yeah. How did you feel about that?
On one hand, I wish Chapel just would have said, like, I just need time now. But she's going through something heavier she's going through more feelings than just the Klingon on the ship when it comes to Spock. What Boimler just said last week, about her not being in Spock's history. The week before that, she was already having difficulties when they're literally playing 3D chess about their relationship. When she's been pining for him so long, and then things start coming, she's already having doubts about their future. And so him trying to be there and her not being able to tell him is a hint of what's to come.
Yeah, and Spock taking it personally, on one hand, is not very logical, and it's not what she needed because it's not about him, which she said. But on the other hand, I can also kind of understand where he's coming from, because it's hard. Like, when you see somebody you love suffering, you want to do something about it.
Uh-huh.
Like, I remember, Sabriel, one time you were staying in my guest room and you had a headache and you asked me if I have any aspirin in the house. And I said, no, but I can go get some. And you said, no, that's okay. And I said, Sabriel, you're suffering and I have the ability to alleviate some of that. Why would I not do that? And so I hopped in my car, came back 10 minutes later from the pharmacy with some aspirin. And I know that having a headache and having PTSD are not the same thing.
Right.
But point being, you want to help people when you see them suffering. And when Spock couldn't do that, he took it personally, which he shouldn't, but I totally understand why he did.
I mean, he's only human as well.
That's true, as he points out.
Plus, as the show has pointed out to us multiple times, many of this crew don't have the war experience that the others do. And he does not. He doesn't know what it's like for her.
I mean, we learned in season 2 of Discovery that the Enterprise was specifically made to sit out the Klingon War, because if the war ended with Starfleet losing, they wanted Starfleet's best and brightest to still be out there.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted the Enterprise to survive. There are at least 2 remarks I want to make about the last exchange that M'Benga had with Pike.
Okay.
M'Benga said, there were 2 parts to the sentence. The first part was, I didn't start the fight, which one of my coworkers, James, suggested might be referring to the immediate fight he just had with the Ambassador, but could also mean the fight the Ambassador started on Jagal.
Oh, absolutely. It was not a question. It was allegory for everything.
Oh, I didn't take it that way at all. I took it very literally. If James hadn't said it, it never would have occurred to me. And second, he said, but I'm glad he's dead. And that, so I started this review by saying, I can't insert myself into this episode. I can't judge these characters. I'm disappointed in the Doctor. This is the one exception I'll make. I'm disappointed in him for being glad that this guy is dead. And I'm reminded of when Osama bin Laden was eliminated. I at the time was dating somebody who was going to a Jesuit college, so that meant that there were a lot of Christians on that campus, and many of them were celebrating that Osama bin Laden had been eliminated. And I remember my girlfriend at the time, her roommate, posted on Facebook that it was deplorable to celebrate any human's death. And in this roommate's post, she said, I can acknowledge that the world is a safer place without Osama bin Laden, without being glad that he's dead. And I'm like, you know what? I think that's an important distinction. And I don't think a doctor should be glad that somebody is dead. He might say, I think the world's a better place without him. But that's still different from saying, I'm glad he's dead, which is what Dr. M'Benga said. And that I'm disappointed in.
Yeah, he also had that trauma he went through because of this guy. Directly.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And that goes back to me not being able to judge these characters like I usually do. But even though the Ambassador is dead, the trauma doesn't go away.
I would say I probably have felt this way before about some people.
You're glad they're dead?
Yeah. But for the same reasons, they can't hurt anymore. They can't hurt people anymore.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a understandable reaction.
Yeah, no, this is a tough episode, which is gonna make the jump to the next one such a leap.
Oh my god! Like, I wish they had gone from the Lower Decks crossover to the musical episode. Instead, they sandwiched like the darkest episode ever into the middle.
I think they had to, both for reasons, but also like the levity. Like, we needed something happy just so we can drop, so we can be right back up to next week's finale.
So before we talk about next week's episode, I need to get this context from you, Sabriel. Do you like musicals?
Yeah, I don't have a strong history of musicals. There are a lot of modern ones I've enjoyed. Like, I had enjoyed Avenue Q before. I've seen Wicked 3 times in the theater. I've seen a lot of more modern musicals. I've seen the Book of Mormon. I've seen Spamalot a number of times. But classic theater, don't have much experience. I've never had much desire to see Cats. Phantom of the Opera, I might be missing out on a weird story, but I traditionally had not liked musicals until I some more of the modern theater. How about you?
Love them. Absolutely love them. I've done in dozens of musicals myself. I love being in them. I love seeing them. The TV show Gallivant, which ran for 2 seasons, was phenomenal, right?
Oh, I love Gallivant. Also more modern theater, right?
I listen to the soundtrack for Gallivant like once every 3 months, and it's like a 2 CD album because it covers both seasons. It's exhaustive. I love Gallivant. I love musicals. The very day I saw this episode of Strange New Worlds, that being Subspace Rhapsody, I immediately went on iTunes to buy the soundtrack. Was inconsolable that it was not available online.
I think
Did
it is
not become.
now.
It became available the very next day. But that was 24 long hours. So yeah, and as you and I discussed last week, I'm disappointed that it got quote unquote ruined for me that there was a musical episode, but it came up in so many different contexts on Twitter, in discussions with you, in discussion with coworkers, in Signal messages with personal friends. It was everywhere, so I could not have avoided it. Yeah.
Let's just jump into it.
Yeah, the reason I ask if you like musicals is because former guest of the show Amanda went on extensively on Twitch the other night that she does not like musicals. And one of the comments she made was that theater people assume that everybody loves musicals.
I can totally see this.
And as a theater person in the audience of her Twitch channel, I felt either seen or attacked. Your pick.
I think both might apply.
maybe a little. And, I didn't mean to find an exception to what she was saying. I was just trying to probe the boundaries. I was like, well, Amanda, are there any exceptions? Like, I assume you didn't like Gallivant. She's like, no, I hated Gallivant. I was like, what about I remember, Amanda, you said that you liked that the musical episode of Buffy had an in-universe reason for why they were singing. She's like, yes, I did like that. It gave it context. Doesn't mean I liked the music. I just liked the reason why they were singing. I was like, okay.
Yeah, and it's bunnies.
It could be bunnies. And maybe we will be bunnies, but it's not probable. But anyway, that's why I asked if you like. And also, another ex of mine hated musicals and would not see them under any circumstances.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I never had that sharp reaction to them. I wasn't exposed to them growing up, so I didn't have my parents. If they had any interest, I never saw it, and so I don't think I saw any until some more modern theater in the 20s, or excuse me, in the knots started coming out. So
yeah, I didn't get exposed to them until my older brother started performing in them in high school and then extensively in college. And I went to see all the shows he did. And I thought that's what I want to be when I grow up. and so I started doing theater in high school, which put me in the theater camp, not the literal camp, like a summer camp, but like the group of people at school who did theater, and brief anecdote. I remember one time, I guess I hadn't fully assimilated yet. It was my senior year of high school. And it was last period, and I mentioned to one of my theater friends who was in the same class as me that my dad and I were going to see The Phantom after school that day. And she was like, oh, I love Phantom of the Opera. It's one of my favorite musicals. I've seen it so many times. Where is it playing? And I said, at the local movie theater. And she said, there's a movie version of Phantom of the Opera? I was like, no, I didn't say The Phantom of the Opera. I said The Phantom. Billy Zane dresses up in purple, fights crime. She's like, oh. She just kind of walked away. It's like, yeah, I'm going to see The Phantom.
I suppose probably didn't get much experience with that because when I was little, I hated being like on stage, anything like that. I hated school plays. I hated being a part of them. We were forced to be that. Hated that. Now I like being on stage in front of people, but young me hate it with a passion. So I'm sure that's if my parents liked it, they never let me know that because it was the worst thing in the world for me. But my parents don't like being put on point either, so I can see why they did not like that aspect either.
Yeah, anyway. I did not like public speaking as a kid, and we didn't have much of a theater program, and usually my parents would discourage me from auditioning for them because they didn't want to have to go to the show in the end. No, like there was one time there was like a Christmas pageant, and the entire like grade 7 is now going to get up and sing. Grade 8 is now going to get up and sing, and we'd all rehearse these songs. And so the night of the pageant, I went upstairs. My mom's like, "Where are you going?" I was like, "Oh, I'm going to get dressed to go to the pageant." And she's like, "Oh, you don't want to go to that." And I was like, what? She's like, no, just stay home. Skip it. And so I didn't go because they didn't want to go. They didn't want to bring me to the pageant. And the next day at school, like the teacher and all my classmates were like, Ken, where were you? You were the only one missing from the pageant. There was an empty seat on the stage. And I was like, my parents didn't want to bring me. So that was not traumatizing, as you can see 40 years later.
Right. No, does nothing at all. So Subspace Rhapsody, let's jump into it because we don't have much time left already. And
we have as much time as we want.
I enjoyed the episode. I got a kick out of it, even if I understand like the only reason it exists because they wanted to do a musical episode, and the reasoning for it, like in-universe reasoning, is really loose. I don't care. It was fun. I enjoyed it. I've seen it twice, and I had the experience where like watching it Thursday morning, like had emotional. It was powerful, right? And then I tried to share that joy with someone who's not a Trekkie by being but I know they love musicals, and she just like her reaction was, "Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it." Thanks. That honestly killed my Thursday. But partner and her partner, I said like we're gonna want to watch. Usually we want to watch these ones separately. Like we're gonna want to watch this one together. Trust me. So Thursday night we all watched it, and they loved it so much.
Yay!
And I was able to enjoy the music more. I have a lot of difficulty hearing lyrics in music until I know the song. And so like the second time I got more enjoyment out of the song, but it's music, and I was still kind of like, none of these are really sticking with me. And I know I'm saying a lot here, but I'm trying to get to the point here. But like none of these are really sticking to me. And then I woke up at like 5 a.m. this morning, and all of a sudden I'm in my head, I'm thinking of La'an song. I'm thinking of a Chapel song, Spock's Omniacs. Like, okay, finally 2 days later, some of it is kind of in my head, even without any prompting.
Yeah, no, I get that. Like, I went to see a concert the other night, Laser of the Double Clicks and two of his friends, and one of the musicians, Emily Henry. I love her music. I have her albums. I listen to them at home. I know the lyrics. But when I hear a new song, like, performed live, I was like, oh, I love that song. I have no idea what it was about, but I liked how it sounded, and I'm sure there were lyrics.
Like you'll catch parts of the lyrics or the vein or the funny part that you're supposed to remember.
Yeah, and that's not a criticism at all of the performer or the lyrics. It's just I process visually better than I do audibly. You know, that's one of the reasons I don't do audiobooks. I'd much rather read it because, you know, like I can tell you later, oh, that passage occurred on the bottom of page 27. You know, it's on the right side.
Here I can tell you, I was driving by the city when I was listening to that part of the book.
Exactly. Yes, I pair the visual with the audio. But there was one question while I was watching the episode for the very first time, I thought to myself, this is a question I have to ask Sabriel because I think I have an answer, and I want to answer before you do.
Okay, you're gonna answer my answer, and I'll see if you're right.
I was asking myself when I was watching the episode, what is Sabriel's favorite song from this episode? And I'm going to guess.
Okay, because I don't know if I have an answer for you.
Okay, that's valid. I think it's when La'an was singing to her watch.
No, actually.
Okay.
What was that one? It wasn't Defying Gravity, but it made me think of Defying Gravity. What was that one called again? I had it earlier.
How would that feel?
Maybe she had a line in there that was like, not Defying Gravity.
That's the name of the song. How would that feel?
Yeah. There was a line in there that like falling sideways. I don't remember.
Okay.
That was the big part of the song she'd sing a few times. Refrain. The one that I woke up this morning was Nurse Chapel's "I'm Ready." For whatever reason, not necessarily related to what it was about. Just that was the one that I think of the most. Oddly enough, like the grand finale, is not the one I think of. The ones that were in my head this morning were "I'm Ready," "I'm the X," and the opening, the most confusing thing, whatever it's actually called.
Status Report.
Yeah, Status Report. Those three songs are the ones that have been in my head the most of all of them. How about you? Do you have a favorite?
I do. Do you want to guess what it is?
I'd say my least favorite one was the one where they're literally anti-grav. Um,
Connect. Was that Keeping Secrets?
yeah. Probably connect to your crew. To connect to your crew.
Yep. Connect to your truth.
That was a fun one.
But what's my favorite?
Oh, that was my guess.
Oh, that one. Oh, I'm sorry. I would say my second favorite is Status Report, the opening number. And my favorite is We Are One, which is the grand finale.
Yeah.
And the thing both of those have in common is that they are ensemble numbers.
Mm-hmm.
They have lots of voices. And this is the thing that I was consciously noting as the episode was playing for the first time. The vast majority of the songs have a lack of choreography.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of songs where it's just Spock or Uhura, and they're just sort of like walking around, talking. And you don't really get a lot of dance when it's an individual. I get that, unless you're in Singing in the Rain, for example. But I love choreography, and like We Are One, I wasn't sure where it was going, and then they have all these red shirts in the corridor checking panels, and then the whole thing rotates, and then they're doing like West Side Story.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, boom, this is what I've been waiting for. And we finally got some choreography, and like all the bridge crew are up in front of the view screen with their arms up, and I love it. And the one thing that sets We Are One apart from Status Report, them both being ensemble numbers, is that the We Are One ensemble number, the ensemble includes Klingons.
I was going to get there in a minute, but might as well talk to you about it now. I didn't recognize the person who was playing the Klingon until it was mentioned.
Yeah, that was Bruce Horak.
Yeah, our hammer. General Garkog, what a great name. Having to go through this dishonor.
We have found the source of our dishonor.
Everyone, I think, was expecting Klingon opera.
It wasn't until after the show was over that I thought, they were singing in
really?
English.
Oh, that part, yeah. That didn't bug me at all, because the whole conceit is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Nor did the K-pop or the K-pop.
Yeah, I didn't recognize it as K-pop until I was talking to former guest of the show, Ambassador Mark, and he's like, "Oh, that was K-pop." I was like, "Oh, it was."
It was so funny. So I did not expect it at all, and I was laughing so hard.
I know, because the octave of his voice, the range just shifts dramatically. Like he coughs and then he just starts.
That's what I mentioned to you. I was like, this doesn't sound like the same person. I still think it sounds like Weird Al.
But it's not.
I can't find any proof that it is. He's not listed in the credits. They must have done something with autotune, because he sounds so much like Weird Al in that short little bit of song.
There is some auto-tuning throughout the episode.
Yes.
But Weird Al was also in Gallivant, and having just listened to the soundtrack recently, I'm not hearing him in this.
No? Interesting. Maybe I'll try to listen to that again, because it sounds so much like him to me. But it also seemed like one of those epic rap battles music videos.
Yes. And it made me wonder, are all visual communications on the bridge recorded?
Because you want to be able to see that again in the future?
Well, I gotta wonder, how long lasting is the Klingons' dishonor? Because you just know that that's going to leak out onto the dark web. Klingon is doing K-pop.
That'd be funny. So, like we see a picture of Quark or a video of Quark watching this, or like they could bring it on lower decks. I mean, we've already seen them playing Ballast and and whatever.
Oh yeah, that's right. So we were halfway through this episode of the show, Subspace Rhapsody, and at that point I was thinking to myself, you know what? Strange New Worlds is clearly non-canon, and nothing in this show makes sense or matters if Uhura doesn't get a solo. Oh
my god. Cecilia is so good. Keep Us Connected was a great song.
Yes, I'm surprised that they waited until the very end to give them that song. And I'm glad they finally did, because I'm like, okay, this makes sense. Not only is it in character for Uhura, who we saw singing last season and who we know from TOS has musical talents, but also Celia Rose Gooding is a Grammy Award-winning singer. And so they need to have a song in this show. And they did. And ultimately, they're the one who brought the whole crew together for the finale.
Yes. Do they have they them pronouns?
They do.
Oh, I did not know that. I never heard that until today.
Hmm.
I liked Pike calling Uhura the voice of the Enterprise.
That was sweet.
Fun. I was just looking through the song list here. That moment came through me. Yeah, so I'm glad that they got their chance to shine in song. I love that little bit.
And you know who else has their own EP out with a number of songs?
Yeah, it's Christine Chong.
That's right.
I started B was asking for that, and I'm like, yeah, here you go, because I told her all about it, and like, yeah, she actually stopped doing stage and music to do acting, hopefully to get notoriety, so she can go for her stage stuff.
Yeah, this is all just one big promotion for her musical talents.
Apparently, she was saying in Ready Room she was begging to be able to do a musical episode since the first season, and they were like, we're toying with some ideas, and they told her like 6 months before they actually started filming that they're gonna do it, but didn't know what it was gonna be like or anything like that. And so,
Did you know that Ron Moore wanted to do a musical episode of DS9?
I did not. Oh my god. Okay, I can only see Avery Brooks doing that.
And Vic Fontaine.
Oh, I mean, I'm Vic, but
Jimmy Darren. Yep.
I can't see the rest of the crew doing it.
I could see Odo doing it as much as we saw Spock doing it this week.
No, I take it back. Not a visitor. I can see her doing it.
Oh, she used to be a dancer. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure she has sung in her career. I could see Bashir hamming that up. And O'Brien, maybe? Keiko?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
I could not see Worf doing it. I could see Jadzia. I don't know about Ezri. But I also don't know those actors' talents. Kind of like in this show, we hardly ever saw Mbenga singing because he said, I do not sing.
Yeah, I don't think him as an actor, Babs, was. But Erica Ortega apparently has some musical theater background, but didn't get to shine here either. Melissa Navia.
One thing I loved about in the opening number status report when Pike says, Ortega's, can we get a status report? And she starts singing, and in the background, not only does Pike leap out of his seat, because this is the first time he's seen somebody singing, it was only heard over the intercom before, not only does he leap out of the seat, he actually takes a step back behind the seat. Like he's distancing himself from Ortega. Like, is this contagious? Because when he had that brief song, Private Conversation on the bridge, a review I read of the episode called his song less technically complex than the other actors' songs.
Yeah. He said he had fun, but I don't think he was also not much of a musical person.
Yeah, and that's one of the challenges you have to work around. Like if you watch the Buffy episode, that's a musical, which was fantastic in my opinion. I have the soundtrack to that as well. Willow doesn't do any singing in that episode. And so you have to imagine the actor either requested no songs or they weren't up to the she wasn't
playing to her strengths, right? Because she was in band camp.
She plays the flute. Doesn't mean she can sing. That's right.
Wow, that's a deep cut. Unless you're 40 or older.
Moving on.
Let's see here. We got Kirk back.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, Ken's not gonna like this.
Well, he's now been in. You're right. He's been in a third of this season now. 3 out of 9 episodes.
It's a prequel to the TOS. It doesn't bug me at all.
Yeah, but there are a lot of members of Starfleet that don't show up 3 times. This season.
And it's also his show. It's his ship.
It's not. He will be. It will be. But it's not yet.
I love him on there, so I don't see any problem at all with this.
I feel like there's more reason to see Robert April on the show than there is.
Which we missed his baritone.
And also, did you know that when Robert April was captain of the Enterprise, his wife was the CMO?
I don't remember.
I just happened to read that. I didn't see his appearance on the animated series, but yeah, Dr. April.
Huh.
I think. I don't know if she took his name, but.
Gotcha. So let's head on music. We actually got some storyline advancement as well here.
Yeah, there's one story in particular I want to talk to you about.
No
Which one do you want?
person here on this ship is going to have happy relationship. La'an got rejected. Um, uh, Chapel is like, my career is more important than you, Spock. See you later. And now
Yeah.
Patel is gonna die.
Okay, we need to talk about those three things. Let's go in order. The first one was which one?
Let's just go with La'an Kirk.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the first one. So just 4 days before this episode aired, there was an article published online advocating for more appearances in Strange New Worlds of the women who are important to Kirk. And the women it was talking about were his mother and Carol Marcus. And we got Carol Marcus referenced in this episode. It established the timeline very clearly. And so I love that they worked that in, because this is something that we didn't really know about until Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. It never came up in the TV show. And now we know that the whole time that Kirk was captain of the Enterprise back in the 60s, not only was he a dad, but he knew he was a dad. And I love that this has been clarified canonically.
Even though it's not his show.
Yes.
No, but I agree with you. Yeah. And like he says, his relationship is complicated. Which explains a lot in TOS. Like his relationship with Carol. And Carol, I mean, established in Star Trek 2 that basically she didn't want Kirk in David's life. And we assume this is David she's talking about. We don't know for sure, but I think the assumption's pretty obvious.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I did not expect that name drop at all. I was like, where is this going? Where is this going? Is he going to do it? And like, is he going to kiss La'an? Like, I did not expect to hear Carol Marcus's name come out of his mouth.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that this Kirk is not hooking up with La'an, but that's not the reason I was expecting. Also, when Kirk came on board, number one was like, "Oh, you and La'an know each other." Should number one be
energy?
But like, should number one have been surprised by that? Because Kirk had been on board for that zombie episode.
I mean, more than her security clearance. Yeah, I mean, she doesn't necessarily aware. La'an didn't tell her about what happened and her feelings toward him. So, I mean, sure, they might have met, but number one didn't mean, oh, you know each other, like you heard each other's names. She meant like, oh, you know each other, like you have had more of a talk than just welcome to the Enterprise. So that's what she meant by.
Because La'an should know everybody who comes on board.
Yeah, it's not the literal no, it's the no.
Oh, okay.
But not the biblical no.
No, I got that. Right. So 22 years ago or so, I was in an independent film called Disc. It was about Ultimate Frisbee. It was a comedy. And one of the last scenes in the movie is actually one of the first ones they shot, because it didn't require a complex set or a lot of people. It was just a man and woman and the woman has a crush on the guy, and it's not requited. And they're in a room, and she goes to leave. And she actually, like, the actress, since it was the first day of shooting, she just wasn't in the groove yet. And she went to leave the wrong way and then had to turn around and leave the right way. And that was not scripted. She just got confused, and they kept it in the movie. And then La'an does the same thing in this episode.
So adorable.
It was adorable. And my headcanon is that it was unscripted. I know it probably was scripted, but I just love the idea that she just got confused.
Oh, it's adorable. I love that so much. And seeing her just all flustered was so cute.
Yeah, because it's so out of character for her.
And I mean, her song about her daydreaming about Kirk was kind of sweet. And then her ultimate resolution of like, she went for it, she tried, it didn't work out, but now she's kind of like, maybe I can be a bit more vulnerable.
Take more chances, yeah. You know, it kind of reminds me of Picard getting his heart impaled by a Nausicaan. I remember as a kid, I found that confusing, because in the parallel universe where he didn't get impaled, he was more cautious. And I was like, I could see just the opposite, where if you take a chance and the chance results in you getting your heart impaled by a Nausicaan, that's a good lesson in not taking chances. You know, I would think that Picard would be more cautious, but he survived. And I guess the lesson you learned is you take chances and bad things happen, but you survive. And that's what happened to La'an here. She took a chance, didn't work out, but she's still here.
Yeah.
And now she has resolution. She has closure.
And then we get to Spock and Chapel.
Oh, God. I have... Well, you've been advocating for this relationship for so long. You
I've
felt
been
it was
advocating
often...
for this journey.
You've certainly felt that it was one of the main plots in some of the episodes.
It was the main plot to me.
So how did you feel about this episode's developments?
They did her dirty.
Yeah?
All right, we've established that Nurse Chapel is flaky with relationships. We've established she's driven by her career. This still felt different. But maybe that's just because we actually got to watch her crush, where in the past it was just a past thing. But her journey from Spock and her clearly had feelings for each other to let me backtrack. Basically, to my problem with it, with her reveal, breaking up with him here, was not that she did it. I was expecting it. Is that we didn't get to see much of her journey to the pathway to here. We saw her struggling with the 3D chess, but we didn't really get much time with that. We saw Boimler tell her she's not in Spock's future. Yes, that's a great part of the journey. We didn't get to see how she felt after Boimler told her this. And then last week, the with telling Spock like she just needs space. Ultimately, we find out that meant in two ways, not just because of what happened, but she needed space from him. But we are missing key points, in my opinion. We're missing key points of her mentality in between those moments that we've not gotten here. And so, like, her telling him that she's ready to do this and she's ready to break up with him, it felt like missing. I think it was done dirty, and we didn't get to explore Nurse Chapel as much as we should have. We didn't have enough episodes between then and now. The song was good.
I didn't have those words for it, but I do agree with you. I was really disappointed that I felt like for a lot of the first season and a half, we saw Chapel crushing on Spock more than we saw Spock crushing on Chapel. This very much felt like something she wanted. And now that she has it, she lets it go so quickly.
That's the feeling, even though I don't think it's the truth. And it sucks. They did her dirty.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, this was a whole episode of Cheers that you probably remember how there was Melville's upstairs. His daughter fell in love with Sam.
Yes.
And Melville was like, no, you can't have him. He's a bartender. He's too low for you. And she's like, I don't care. I love him. And finally, like the dad says, you only want him because I say you can't have him. She's like, no, that's not true. Finally, he's like, fine, I see how it is. You can marry him. And suddenly she's like, why would I want to marry a bartender? As soon as you can have it, you don't want it anymore. I feel like that was Chapel. Like the idea of dating Spock was more important to her than actually dating Spock.
It's like, that's definitely like that's kind of the feeling they're giving off, but it's not what I feel. It does not feel like that's what was earned. What got to this point? If they think they dropped the ball so hard on her relationship with Spock, like we knew it was going to end, and it could have ended this episode, but we missed so much of the in between to her getting to this breakup.
Yeah, the breakup should have happened next episode or next season.
At least if. With number of episodes, if we could have got more time with it. I know we had last week was a Mbenga story. The week before that was Lower Decks episode. And the week before that was we're drawing a blank.
Zombie episode?
Yeah, it was a horror episode. Yeah. So they didn't really have a space for that, but these episodes don't need to be an hour long. I could have explored more of that. I just think it was done dirty. It shouldn't have to be fill in the blanks on this specific storyline.
Yeah, I agree. It was rushed.
Yeah, but also not liking how they seem to be implying this is what's going to cause Spock to go back to being a Vulcan emotion, showing less emotion. That's the implication, and I think that's not right either.
It is a common response to trauma to shut down
100%. Like I've been there this year. But it doesn't feel like that does Spock the character a disservice, and as if it's the only reason. Nurse Chapel is the reason. It doesn't feel right. It feels we still have plenty of more episodes to go, assuming we get a season 3. And we still have the next episode. But so his story gets to continue, but I don't know how much more Chapel we're gonna get, and I hate that.
Yeah,
I think she's still gonna be on the show. I just don't know how much Chapel.
Yeah, will the 3 months that she's away be between seasons?
Yeah.
Like, will she ever actually be gone from the show? We don't know. As you point out, we do know that is it Dr. Corby that she's doing the
Yeah, she gets
study with?
engaged too. I don't remember. I said married before, but I know she engaged. I don't know if actually married.
Yeah. So she might come back from that and be like, I'm engaged.
And everyone's gonna be like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. So we don't know.
Yeah. And then the third thing.
Oh, there was a third relationship that Captain Patel is going to die.
Yeah. That was a little total lampshade. Don't worry, we'll come back and just plan our vacation when I get back from this one last mission.
She's
like,
1 week from retirement.
We just learned her first name. It's like Marie, and now she's going to die or be incapacitated in some way where she won't be able to go with Pike on vacation for a long time. We don't know if she's going to die, but I hope they subvert expectations.
Maybe they'll say she died, but she actually joined Section 31.
Yeah, and then goes and spy on Romulus in the beta canon.
Right. And then, like, she shows up on the Enterprise, and Pike will be like, I thought you were dead. And she's like, I was.
And now you're a Romulan?
I'm glad we both read that book.
So yeah, I like Patel. I don't like Pike Patel. I'm so uninterested in that relationship.
What's the name when you ship those characters? Pike-Tel?
But Pike.
I was thinking that I wasn't going to say it because it's too silly. I like Pike-Tel. All right, so that just brings me down to like minute comments. For example, in the final number, when the engineer, played by Carol Kane, when Pelia and La'an are saying like, I'm going to miss the singing. Spock's like, I won't miss the singing.
That was funny. Or, this is our prime directive. Like, not quite.
Not exactly. Like, so the opening and closing numbers, I haven't rewatched the episode in its entirety, but those are the 2 numbers I've gone back and rewatched. And yeah, I love that bit.
Paramount Plus on YouTube has a lyrics a video for the first song.
Yes, I will put that in the show notes. I'll
status report.
Yep. Oh, and we didn't mention how, just like in the crossover with Lower Decks episode, they changed the opening.
Yes, that was so good. I was trying not to cackle as loud as I did when I was watching this before everyone's still asleep. I'm like, oh my god, they did it in another episode.
It's not fully a cappella, but it's pretty darn close. And
choral.
Yes, and when just like with the animated opening, I didn't notice immediately. And part of me wants to now... What?
So that's interesting. I picked up in a second. I heard a voice.
Well, I think, like, even though I never skip the intro, I think I tend to mentally tune out a little bit because I know what to expect.
See, me, every single time I hear the intro, I start dun, 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 like that whole gets me so excited. And when I was my friend, her husband does not listen to the intro, like they hit the skip intro button. I was like, you what?
But if they do that this week or 2 weeks ago, then they don't even know what they're missing.
Yeah, like I warned them about the last time.
Okay.
And this time they're Star Trek Las Vegas, so...
Part of me wants to take the choral opening and apply it to the animated intro. And just get both of them together.
There you go.
I mean, that would be an easy edit to make in Final Cut Pro.
Oh, we got the original series song after the end of the VR1.
Yes.
That was fun.
Yes.
I didn't expect that. Kind of came out of nowhere. But I was like, you know what? It fit.
I like that they always credit Alexander Courage for writing that original.
Because they always put it at the end in the Strange New Worlds.
Yeah, I mean, it's partly in the opening for Strange New Worlds. It's partly in the opening for Discovery. So they acknowledge him there. But as you may know, Roddenberry wrote lyrics for the original opening
Yes.
song. And the only reason he did that was that he could say he co-wrote the song with Courage and only pay Courage half as much. They never
Freaking
used the lyrics, but
Roddenberry.
so I hope that the Courage estate is continuing to get royalties and that they've made up for that exploitation. I have some. Speaking of this being a musical episode, I forget the director's name of this episode, but he also directed the musical episode of The Flash.
There was one there too.
Yeah, it was a Flash Supergirl crossover. It was a musical episode, and I think there was a villain named the Music Meister, and he made everybody sing. And of course, I have that soundtrack too. But yeah, so this is not the director's first musical episode of a non-musical show, which I thought was kind of cool.
I guess Star Trek has had lyrics in the opening before. They had Faith of the Heart. No. Har, har, har. You did not write that.
So two technical things I want to mention. This is not interesting to probably anybody who isn't me. One is at the very beginning of Horror says, like, this subspace thing works 3 times faster than our usual subspace communications. Imagine a conversation that usually takes weeks can now only take moments. And I was like, that's not how 3 times faster works. If it takes weeks, it'll now take 2 days.
Maybe she's putting in layman's terms for the engineers. I don't know.
I think you're talking, it was something I couldn't help but notice. The other thing is, everybody on this episode, whether it was Kirk or anybody else, they're moving those transporter sliders really fast.
I thought that too. Just
like, what's the rush? We've never seen this before.
I was actually thinking about that because I'm like, maybe on we just got used to the original series, because if you watch on TOS, they just do it. But they have a graphic underneath there on Strange New Worlds because we have more technology.
Right.
Where in like TNG, they always had the 3 thing as a little nod to touchscreen thing that they always try to be methodical. Like, I'm sure it's the actors all just doing their own little touch on it because, this feels right to go slow and then down. And here there's like, bam.
Like, why not just make it a binary switch if you're going to do it that fast? It doesn't have to be a slider.
What it is to make us giggle and go, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, it was very noticeable to me.
Me too, 100%. Both times they did it.
Thank you.
Or a few times this episode.
Thank you.
And I even watched for it in Under the Cloak of War. They did that a little bit there too when they're beaming people up. Whatever. Yeah, but not as bad as here.
Like maybe in War I can understand, but
it was just amusing. Like, really? I guess you can go that fast. I just never questioned it. It was always supposed to go slow. I love. We're going super long here, so I'll be quick here. I love Una's just, you have an energy. That was adorable.
By the way, I recently rewatched a brief scene from The Cage, and I was specifically looking for the part where Pike says, I'm not used to having a woman on the bridge. But then he turns to number 1 and says, I don't mean you, Lieutenant.
Yep.
Lieutenant. Not Commander.
Yes, yeah.
Now, I'm not going to assume that they're going to make that canon by demoting her, because that's just silly. I think it's just that this is the very first episode Roddenberry ever wrote, and he didn't know what he was doing yet.
Oh, no. The Cage happened well before this Strange New Worlds.
Oh, you're right.
Ages ago.
I forgot. You know what? Since The Cage was only made canon by the Menagerie, which takes place in the future of Strange New Worlds, I keep forgetting that The Cage already happened. Like, we saw that in season 2 of Discovery.
We've already seen it in this season too.
There was a flashback to The Cage.
Yeah.
In Discovery. You're right.
And they referenced it in the episode I hated, the Lotus Eaters.
Oh, okay.
That was the whole premise of Lotus Eaters. We left someone behind, and that was a scene talking about Pike was talking about in The Cage.
Yep. No, I forgot.
The other thing, I don't know, I just get a kick out of it. They're the beginning when they're talking about what's going on here. Why are we all singing? They're in the situation room, the radio, not the radio room.
Yep.
Obvious conversation, whatever. They're all around the table. Spock is going on about blah blah blah, and we might be bunnies, not be bunnies. I don't want to be a bunny. Pelia all of a sudden just appears out of nowhere from behind him, like she was sitting on a chair nowhere near the rest of the crew.
Yes,
it was such a weird place that she came out of. Both times I'm watching this, like, it just cracked me up. I'm like, where were you? And no one questioned this. She was just like hiding in the background, waiting for her scene to come up, and that was just totally normal for the crew.
Yep,
and it cracked me up.
I thought it was weird too.
I didn't think it was weird. I thought it was hilarious.
There were 2 name drops, one of which I should have noticed last season, and maybe I did on this very podcast, and I just forgot, is that the person at the helm who is not Ortegas is Mitchell.
Yeah.
And that's clearly named after Kenneth Mitchell, who was an actor on Discovery. And there was also a ship, the USS Mitchell, on a recent episode of one of the Star Treks. I already forgot which one.
Probably Picard season 3.
Probably. So at the time, we presumed that the ship, the USS Mitchell, was named after Kenneth Mitchell. But also, this ensign is named after Kenneth Mitchell. So is the ship named after the ensign who's named after Kenneth Mitchell?
Maybe, but Mitchell's also a common enough name.
Yeah. I mean, in the Star Trek universe, you're
I know
right.
what
It
you
could be
mean.
any Mitchell.
Yeah.
But in
Here.
our perspective, clearly it's all the same Mitchell.
Yeah.
Anyway, and the other thing...
They kept lampshading the Klingons were affected by this without saying it, because they kept showing the graphic. It was expanding into Klingon space. I'm like, they're not bringing this up for a reason.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the Klingons come in later.
Yep.
Sorry.
One other name that got dropped, Uhura, acknowledged a transmission from the USS Nemurfo.
Yeah, I don't know the reference.
Yeah, like I had to go back and turn the captions on because I did not recognize that name. Scott Nemurfo, he was the writer and producer for the first season episode Jetrel on Star Trek Voyager.
Oh.
And he was the associate producer for the 1997 documentary Trekkies.
Oh, well, nod to them.
He passed away 7 years ago at the age of 54.
Oh, wow. So young.
He was also an associate producer on the 2000 film X-Men, starring Patrick Stewart and Rebecca Romijn, as well as other Star Trek actors. So, yeah, 7 years later, he has a ship named after him. I don't know what came up, because it's not uncommon to name or pay tribute to somebody who has recently passed, like they did with the USS Nog, was it?
Yeah.
And what class ship was that?
It wasn't just an Ehrenberg class, wasn't it?
Yes, exactly, named after the actor. So, and he passed away in just the last year or two. So for Scott Nemurfo to get a ship, I'm glad he did. Yeah. I just don't know why.
It could be someone that worked with him. I mean,
yeah, I don't know why now is what I should be saying.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. That is the entirety of my notes.
Me too, but I didn't have much either. Job was done dirty. I had fun with the episode. Great episode? I don't know. But I had fun. And they had fun doing it.
Given that Xena Warrior Princess ran for 6 seasons and it had a musical episode, and Star Trek has now collectively run for about 25 seasons and took this long to get a musical episode, it's about time. I mean, I think Buffy's musical episode was in the 6th season. So,
and I think Buffy was the one who basically kind of allowed everyone else to do it or feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
It's the one everyone thinks of.
Yeah. So I'm glad Star Trek got it. I can see how it might be a little bit out of place for a sci-fi show. Don't care. It was fun. I liked it.
Yeah.
And if any show could pull it off, it's Strange New Worlds.
Right. Oh heck, Star Trek hasn't been on the air for most of the time between Buffy and now either. So
this is true. When did Buffy go off the air?
I don't remember the exact date.
It premiered in 1997 and ran until 2003. Okay, and Enterprise went off the air in 2005. Well, of course, then there was the spin-off Angel. But and a second spin-off was shelved in 2022. Oh. Or maybe it was a spin-off, maybe it was a reboot. It was a reboot. Anyway. Yeah, so that is, in one podcast, the darkest and lightest episodes of Strange New Worlds.
And next week, we're going to be on a journey.
Yeah, I don't know anything about next week's episode.
I know you know. That's what I said.
As I commented to you on Signal, I feel like with Under the Cloak of War, in some ways, Strange New Worlds out DS9 to DS9.
Yeah.
And I talked to our friend Susan about that. She says that what is permitted on television has changed a lot since DS9 aired 25 years ago. And also, we as an audience have more of a vocabulary by which to discuss these things. And that's one of the reasons why DS9 didn't go as dark as Strange New Worlds just did. So, that's one perspective. Like, I think definitely 9/11 was a dividing moment in our country. I mean, for example, we had war in the 90s. We had a lot of things going on in the Middle East. But things have changed. And now we have a musical episode as well. So, go figure. Star Trek. It contains multitudes.
Yes.
Yes, and until the next multitude.
1, 2, 3. No. Hit it.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on iTunes and keep your hailing frequencies open by following us on Twitter @TransporterLock or subscribing to our podcast and email newsletter at transporterlock.com.